My parents ignored my medical debt while funding my sister's failed ventures. Now they want me to give $25,000 for her wedding. I cut them off for good. Buckle up, Reddit. Because this is going to be a crazy journey through years of family turmoil, medical issues, and entitlement that will leave your mind spinning. I am talking about golden child syndrome on steroids. The sort in which one child receives everything, while the other is tossed to the curb when they need it the most. I'm Ethan, 35, a man, and I've spent the majority of my life as the unseen son, while my sister Sophie, 30, a female, was treated like royalty. But the true breaking point came when I nearly died, and my parents informed me I was on my own, fast. Forward 4 years, and they want me to fund her fairy tale wedding. Let me explain how we got here, since context is important. This is more than just one event or a single request for money. This is basically 3 decades of systemic favoritism that resulted in them essentially instructing me to deal with my own medical problem while I was battling for my life in a hospital bed. This dysfunction was established early on and sustained throughout my childhood and adulthood. I grew up in what appeared to be a regular suburban family from the outside. Dad works in pharmaceutical sales, earning around $95,000 every year. Mom works as a dental hygienist and earns an additional $55,000 part-time. Not affluent, but certainly comfortable. Upper middle class area, 4-bedroom home in a nice area, with outstanding schools. 2 automobiles are in the driveway. Annual vacations in Florida or the Carolinas. Outsiders saw the standard American suburban arrangement as picture perfect. However, inside that residence, the story is very different. The dysfunction was profound and began early. The dynamic changed dramatically once Sophie was born when I was 4 years old. She was the adorable baby girl my mother had always desired. After having a son initially, Dad quickly brought his princess to treat me. I became the practice child. They had previously identified their parenting errors in the early draft. The bias was not veiled at all. When I was in Little League and played third base, my parents would show up to about half of my games, usually with an excuse about being tired from work or having other responsibilities. During warm-ups, I would search the bleachers in the hopes of seeing them. Half of the time, they just did not show up, the other parents observed. My coach noticed. I pretended it didn't upset me, but it actually did. Sophie started dance classes at the age of 5, and my parents never missed a single recital. Not one. They'd sit in the front row with flowers and a professional photographer, treating each performance as if she were performing on Broadway. They'd take her out to lavish restaurants later to celebrate. I'd generally stay at home with a babysitter or later on my own, eating whatever leftovers were in the refrigerator. Christmas mornings were a joke, but they became a cause of true fear for me. Every December, I get useful things like clothing for school, a new bag, and maybe a book or 2 if I was lucky. Sometimes I didn't even receive what I wanted, only what they thought I should have. One year, it was a dictionary, and the next socks and underwear. Sophie would have a mound of presents beneath the tree. Dolls, games, art supplies, the latest. Technological gadgets, a new bike one year, and a complete bedroom makeover the following year, including new furniture, paint, and decorations. The inequality was so obvious that even extended family members would comment on it during holiday gatherings, but my parents would just laugh it off with dismissive remarks like, "Well, girls need more things than boys," or "Ethan's just not materialistic like that." They convinced themselves I preferred it this way, that I was naturally more minimalist and did not care about gifts. In actuality, I learned early on that expressing disappointment made things worse. When I wanted to join the debate team in high school, I was truly happy for the first time in years. But my parents felt the $30 registration fee was too steep and I should focus on my grades instead. They genuinely informed me that we couldn't afford $30. That same year, they spent $1.00 on a custom-made outfit for Sophie's 8th grade graduation. 8th grade. She was 13. I spotted the receipt on the kitchen counter and gazed in surprise. $1,000 for a dress she would only wear once. But we couldn't afford $30 for something I was passionate about. The message was very obvious from the beginning. Sophie had a significant impact. I did not. She was an investment worth your time, money, and attention. I was the expenditure to be cut. Yet, I adapted. We became self-sufficient out of need. At the age of 14, I got my first real job washing dishes at Mel, a neighborhood cafe. The owner was a gruff, elderly man who paid cash and didn't ask many questions about my age. I'd work Friday nights and Saturday mornings, returning home smelling of grease and dish soap. My hands raw from hot water. I used to save every cent in a shoebox beneath my bed. But when I reached 15, I started my own savings account. When I reached 16, I purchased my own auto insurance after completing the driver's education exam. I purchased my own used Honda Civic with money I had earned myself. I found it on Craigslist for $4,000, negotiated down to $3,500. We paid in cash. My parents applauded me for being responsible and independent, while also paying for Sophie's beautiful new Volkswagen Jetta. When she obtained her license 2 years later, she totaled at 6 months after purchasing it, rear-ending someone while texting. They got her another one. I worked my way through community college, completing general education requirements while living at home, and commuting before transferring to a state institution. For my engineering degree, taking out student loans since my parents indicated they couldn't afford to pay for tuition. By the time I graduated, the debts reached $45,000. I signed those promissory notes personally, seeing the debt accumulate semester after semester. Years later, I discovered they had put up a college fund when I was born. My grandparents had contributed to it, and we had some aunts and uncles for birthdays and holidays. I should have got at least $35,000 in there by the time I reached 18. They had depleted it to pay for Sophie's private high school tuition when she determined that public education was not difficult. Really, it was because her classmates were attending this pricey prep school and she didn't want to miss out. They paid $20,000 annually for 3 years. Sophie's social life took up $60,000 of what should have been my money. When I found out about this years later after an argument, my mother said that I was doing well in public school and Sophie needed the intellectual challenge. Sophie graduated from that prestigious prep school with a 2.8 GPA and no college acceptances beyond the local community college. By the time I finished my civil engineering degree, I had learned not to expect anything from them. I was pleasantly delighted when they arrived for my graduation ceremony, but they had to leave right after my name was announced since they had to transport Sophie to a 3-hour dancing competition. I couldn't even remain for the reception or get a single shot of myself in my cap and gown. I secured a nice job with a building engineering business shortly after graduation. Started at $55,000 per year, which seemed like a lot after years of surviving on minimum pay and ramen noodles. The labor was challenging, long hours on building sites, interacting with contractors and inspectors, learning to read drawings, and managing budgets. But I was really excellent at it, very excellent. Worked hard, arrived early, worked late, and volunteered for challenging assignments that no one else wanted. Was promoted twice in 4 years, and by the age of 30, I was making $85,000 as a project manager, handling multi-million-dollar commercial building projects. When I was 28, I bought my own condominium. I saved up for a down payment over 3 years. I qualified for the mortgage on my own. I furnished it myself using Craigslist and IKEA. I began saving money for the first time in my life, saving 10% of each paycheck faithfully. I earned all I had. Nothing was handed to me. Nothing was supplied. I earned what I owned through hard labor and sacrifice. Meanwhile, Sophie alternated between part-time work and artistic hobbies. Like a pinball, I tried being a photographer for 6 months and spent $4,000 on equipment using my parents' credit card. She took about 20 paid picture sessions before concluding it wasn't her passion. Then I became a social media manager for a few months, which seemed to consist primarily of posting on Instagram and calling it employment. Then she started manufacturing artisan candles. Sure, she had discovered her calling. My parents sponsored A whole setup in their basement with professional equipment, supplies, and even a website. After making around 12 candles, she became bored and decided she wanted to be a yoga instructor. My parents paid for her certification course in California 2000, including travel and lodging for the month-long rigorous course. None of it stuck. None of it generated genuine money. Every enterprise failed within months or weeks. However, my parents sponsored every pivot, new hobby, and company effort that eventually failed. They referred to it as supporting her journey of self-discovery. I termed it enabling a perpetual teenager. She lived rent-free in their finished basement apartment, which they had remodeled especially for her. 1,000 square ft with a full kitchen, bathroom, and private entrance, essentially a flat that would rent for $1, $500 per month somewhere else. After she totaled her first automobile, she drove the one they bought her. They used the credit card they paid off on a monthly basis without question. She was 30 years old and had never paid a utility bill. I've never bothered about health insurance, never been anxious about having enough money to pay an unforeseen bill, never experienced that terror when your check engine light illuminates, and you have to pick between maintaining your car and eating healthily for the next 2 weeks. The animosity grew gradually over time. I'd be lying to say it didn't disturb me. Watching your parents go above and above for one child while treating the other as an afterthought has a psychological impact on you. It influences how you perceive yourself, how you connect with the environment, and how you assess your value. But I kept my mouth quiet, kept a courteous distance, and showed up for key holidays and family dinners on time. I'd sit at their dining table making small chat, watching them fawn over Sophie's newest failed business plan, while hardly acknowledging my own professional achievement. That was my plan for several years. Keep it polite, don't rock the boat. Except that this was the way our family functioned. I had my own life, success, an apartment. I didn't need their permission or support anymore. I had learned to live without it. Then came the event which transformed everything and revealed who they truly were. 4 years ago, I began experiencing stomachache. Not too bad at first, just a continuous aching that wouldn't go away no matter what I tried. I tried ignoring it for a few weeks. I assumed it was stress from a challenging assignment at work or something I ate that disagreed with me. I took some antacids, tried eating bland stuff. I hoped it would resolve itself, but it just became worse. Sharp aches that would knock me over at unexpected moments. Nausea made it difficult to eat. Fever that came and went, causing me to sweat through my covers at night. I lost roughly 10 pounds in 2 weeks because I couldn't keep much food down. I finally went to urgent care on a Saturday morning when the agony became so severe that I couldn't stand up straight. I spent 20 minutes slumped over the driving wheel in the parking lot, working up the nerve to step inside. The intake nurse looked at my face and ushered me to the head of the queue. They assessed my vital signs, asked me a series of questions about my symptoms, and performed some rapid preliminary tests. The doctor entered, seeming worried, and pressed on various regions of my abdomen as I tried not to scream. Then he uttered something that made my blood run cold. "You need to get to the emergency room right now. I'm calling ahead to let them know you're coming. This could be your appendix, and if it is, it might have already ruptured." I drove myself to the ER because I lived alone and didn't want to bother friends. On a Saturday morning with what could be nothing. In retrospect, really poor decision. I was in so much agony that I couldn't concentrate on the road, slumped over the steering wheel, taking side streets because I didn't trust myself on the freeway. I spent 6 hours in your waiting area since it was completely filled. Apparently, Saturday mornings bring out everyone who has been putting off medical attention all week. I sat on a plastic chair sweating and shivering, watching people come and go while my pain worsened from bad to awful. By the time they got me into a room for a CT scan, the surgeon had his face set in the expression physicians use when they're ready to tell you something horrible. He confirmed that my appendix had ruptured and I had peritonitis. For those who are unfamiliar with medical terminology, this refers to an infection spreading throughout my abdominal cavity. If not treated right away, it might be fatal. This kills people. They rushed me to emergency surgery within 1 hour. I hardly had time to complete the permission documents. I could barely grasp what was going on. 1 minute I'm in the emergency room. The next I'm being pushed down halls on a gurney while ceiling lights flash overhead. Then they place a mask on my face and instruct me to count backward from 10. I awoke hours later feeling as if I had been hit by a vehicle. Run over again for good measure, then maybe strike again just to be sure. Tubes pouring out of my arms for 4 meds. A drain tube in my side that looked medieval and HAD more than anything I'd ever felt. Each breath felt like a knife in my abdomen. During evening rounds, the surgeon stopped by and detailed how horrible things had been. They had to perform significant cleansing of my abdominal cavity. Since the illness had progressed so far, the appendix had been burst for at least 48 hours, according to their findings. Another day or two, and I might not have made it. I'd be in the hospital for at least 5 to 7 days on IV antibiotics, potentially longer if complications arose, followed by weeks of home recuperation before I could even consider returning to work. No lifting or driving for at least 2 weeks, limited mobility, and a high risk of infection at surgery sites. That's when reality struck me like a second truck. Money. I had health insurance through my employment. Overall, it was really good coverage. But I picked a high deductible plan since the premiums were lower and I was young, healthy, and had never visited a doctor. The type of decision you make when you're trying to conserve money and don't think you'll ever need major medical treatment. The deductible was $25,000. $25,000. The number was so big that it didn't appear real at first. I requested the financial advisor to repeat it 3 times, confident that I had misheard. But it was the sum. I would be personally liable for $25,000 before my insurance would cover a single dime. The hospital billing staff was compassionate yet straightforward about the issue. I'd be liable for that amount independent of anything else. They could set up a payment plan and work with me on bills. But the money was still outstanding, period. This is how insurance works when you choose the cheapest plan. I was 30 years old. I'd been saving furiously for 3 years, establishing an emergency fund like all the personal finance websites recommended. I had saved around $18,000 and was really proud of it. Money that had required much sacrifice to accumulate. I'm skipping social gatherings, brown bagging lunch every day, driving my old Honda rather than upgrading, and turning down trips with pals. This would entirely wipe it out, leaving me with an additional $12,000 in debt, and I'd be out of work for at least a month, if not longer, resulting in reduced income at a time when I needed it the most. Short-term disability would only pay 60% of my wage. On day 2, from my hospital bed, still hooked up to 4 antibiotics and feeling like crap, I contacted my parents, hands trembling as I dialed their number, explaining the situation as plainly as possible through the pain drug fog. I informed them about the operation, the problems, the longer hospital stay, and the unexpectedly high medical expenditures. I wasn't even asking for the whole amount, just whatever they could assist with, even 6. 0 would make a huge difference. I'd pay them back with interest if they wanted. Just needed some assistance. To escape total financial collapse, after a lengthy silence, my father said, "That's rough. Have you looked into the hospital's financial assistance programs?" I had. I earned too much to qualify. My annual income of $85,000 put me considerably beyond the threshold. I repeated this and asked again if there was anything they could do for me, even if it was only a loan that I would repay over time with a documented agreement and everything. Another prolonged delay. Then Mom got on the phone using that certain tone of voice that indicated she was ready to speak. Something she had practiced. "Ethan, we'd love to help, but we just don't have that kind of money lying around right now. Maybe you should have gotten better insurance when you had the chance. This is part of being an adult, dealing with unexpected expenses and planning ahead of time for emergencies." I couldn't believe what I heard. I was in a hospital bed recovering from emergency surgery that had actually saved my life, and they were lecturing me on insurance options and financial planning as if I were a child who had mismanaged his allowance. You helped Sophie with her car down payment, I added, attempting to maintain my voice. That was $13,000 last year. That was different. She needed reliable transportation to get to work. I need to not be in crushing medical debt from life-saving surgery. Well, maybe if you'd been more careful about your health. That's when I knew they were attempting to blame me for being ill, as if I had decided to have my appendix rupture, as if this was a lifestyle decision I made and now had to live with the repercussions. Dad snatched back the phone. The voice was forceful. Look, we're sorry you're going through this, but we can't just drop everything to bail you out. You have a good job. You're smart. You'll figure it out. That's what we raised you to do. Be independent and handle your own problems. Handle your own problems. These words struck me like physical blows. This was not an issue I had caused. This was a medical issue that happened to me through no fault of my own. And they were treating it as if I had made a terrible financial decision and now needed to learn the consequences. Can you at least come visit? I begged, dreading how desperate I sounded. We'll try to get by this week, Mom responded. But your dad has a big presentation on Wednesday and I have that charity event on Thursday. They only paid me a visit once. During my week-long hospital stay, showed in on Saturday afternoon, and stayed for around 40 minutes. The majority of that time was spent discussing Sophie's angst over her newest failed business effort, the candle thing that was already failing. They were concerned about her emotional health since she appeared to be battling with it. I'm laying in a hospital bed with tubes sticking out of me, facing financial ruin, and they're telling me how difficult things are for Sophie because her hobby company isn't functioning. They did not bring any food despite the fact that hospital cuisine is dreadful. When I was discharged, no one offered to aid me with anything. They didn't ask what they could do or how they could help me. Just ticked the box indicating that they had visited their ill kid and departed. As I saw them walk out of my hospital room, I had a moment of clarity. I was totally alone in this. Sophie never arrived, not once. I texted you on day 3. Sorry you're sick. I hope you feel better soon. With a flower emoji. That was the extent of her worry for her brother who was in the hospital with a possibly deadly illness. I spent that week lying in a hospital bed, watching nurses come and go, dealing with pain and discomfort, and the humiliation of needing help with basic functions, facing a financial disaster that would undo years of careful saving, all while knowing my parents were perfectly capable of assisting, but had chosen not to. They had the money. I knew they had it. They had just spent $13.00 on Sophie's automobile down payment without blinking. They were preparing for their yearly vacation to Florida in a few months. Dad had just gotten himself some new golf clubs, but assisting his kid during a medical emergency was too much to ask. When I was discharged after 7 days, I took an Uber home because asking for a ride seemed ridiculous. I paid $48 from my fast diminishing money account to transport myself and my tiny bag of possessions back to my condo. I could scarcely walk, so the driver assisted me up the steps. I spent the following month recovering alone in my condo, attending follow-up visits by myself, dealing with insurance paperwork and hospital billing departments while still recovering from major surgery. The surgical drains had to be kept in place for 2 weeks, and I was responsible for their care. I had to change my own dressings, check my own wounds for symptoms of infection, and measure and record drainage output as if I were my own nurse. Randy, my co-worker, discovered what had happened and created a meal train in which individuals from the office delivered me food for the next 2 weeks. These were folks I hardly knew outside of work, yet they showed up anyhow. They brought me groceries, picked up my meds, and sat with me for an hour just to give me some human contact. My college mate Tim traveled over from 2 hours away every few days to check on me and assist with tasks I couldn't complete on my own. He'd take out my garbage, assist me wash without getting the bandages wet, make sure I was taking my prescriptions correctly, arrive without being asked, and never grumble about the journey. My parents phoned me twice that month, each to inform me of anything going on with Sophie. The first call was about her decision to close down the candle company. They asked if I wanted to buy any of the leftover items for cost. The second call was about her new plan to become a yoga instructor. Weren't they enthusiastic about her new direction? Neither call asked how I was doing, if I needed anything, or how my rehabilitation was progressing. My medical situation seemed to have been ignored since thinking about it was inconvenient. I paid off the medical bills over the next 3 years. $25,000 was paid in recurring monthly payments, which kept me continually anxious about money. $611 each month for 36 months. Every payment is a reminder of the day my parents decided not to aid me. My Honda began experiencing major difficulties after 215,000 miles, forcing me to postpone purchasing a new vehicle. I was unable to accumulate enough money for a down payment on a property as intended. I put my entire life on wait to pay off debt from an emergency that was not my fault and that my parents could have assisted with if they had wanted to. Throughout those 3 years, I witnessed them assisting Sophie with a variety of pricey items. Every time I heard about another bailout or investment for a failing enterprise, it seemed like a dagger being inserted deeper into an old sore that had never healed. Those were years of deep animosity. Every automatic payment deducted from my checking account seemed like a reminder of their betrayal. Every time I watched my parents post on social media about assisting Sophie with anything new, my resentment grew, but I remained mute, maintained limited contact, and convinced myself it will ultimately be paid off and I could go forward. Finally, 3 years and 2 months after the operation, I made the final payment and saw my loan balance go to zero. Should have felt relieved, but instead I felt enraged, angry over the time lost, the chances missed, and the stress faced, all of which were unwarranted. If my parents had just assisted their kid during a medical emergency. The breaking point occurred 3 months ago, just as I had begun to restore my funds and felt financially solid again. Mom called me on a Tuesday afternoon to see if I was free for Sunday supper. They said they had wonderful news to give and wanted the entire family there. Her voice had that joyful tone that indicated something significant was happening. I assumed Sophie had acquired a new career or something, maybe even found something that would stick for once. They agreed to come. I marked it on my calendar. I didn't think much about it other than hope supper wouldn't be too uncomfortable. Considering our friendship, I arrived at their place on Sunday to discover what I can only characterize as a full celebration. Put up, there was a 2-tiered cake from the upscale bakery downtown. There were silver and gold balloons everywhere, with the words, "Congratulations," a banner extended over the dining room. Sophie is sitting at the dining room table with her boyfriend Ryan. Both of them were beaming as if they had won the jackpot. Holding hands and almost shining with delight, they were engaged. I faked excitement that I did not feel, offered congrats, which most likely sounded empty, made the usual small conversation about how he proposed and if she was startled. Ryan is a good man, works in IT and earns around $65,000, looks stable and mature. Sophie appears to be well cared for. If she was pleased, that's good. Whatever. It's not my business. Then Dad stood up to make his statement, tapping his glass with a fork as if we were attending a formal occasion. "We are so excited to help. Sophie and Ryan start their life together," he said, his voice full with passion. "We've been planning this for months, saving and preparing for this day. We know how expensive weddings can be and how stressful it is for young couples just starting out. I had a bad feeling about where this was headed, so we're going to give them $50,000 toward their wedding and first year of marriage. Consider it our gift to help launch their future together. $50,000. The room swirled slightly. I grabbed the edge of the dining table to keep myself stable. The same parents who couldn't afford $25,000 when I almost died were nonchalantly declaring they'd spend $50,000 on a wedding, more than twice what they'd refused to assist me with during a life-threatening medical emergency. "We're thinking about a destination wedding," Sophie exclaimed, leaning forward with enthusiasm. "Maybe Italy or Greece or possibly the Amalfi Coast. Something really special and memorable that our friends will talk about for years. And the $50,000 will help with the ceremony, the honeymoon, and getting set up in a new apartment together." Mom's face was almost beaming. We've been saving specifically for Sophie's wedding for years. We started a fund when she turned 18. We want her special day to be absolutely perfect, something she'll remember forever. The phrase saving for years struck me like a physical blow. They'd been steadily saving money for Sophie's hypothetical future wedding, while I was drowning in medical debt from a true life-threatening situation. That's very generous, I responded, my tone remaining neutral. We're also hoping you'll contribute, Dad explained, turning to face me squarely. As her older brother, it would mean a lot to Sophie if you helped make her dream wedding come true. We were thinking maybe you could chip in 20 or 25,000. You're doing really well with your career now. The room became utterly quiet. Everyone was staring at me eagerly. Let me get this straight, I said softly. You want me to give Sophie 20 to 25,000 for her wedding. It's what the family does. Dad explained. We all pitch in to help each other during important life moments. Something inside me broke. Important life moments like emergency surgery to save your life. The temperature in the room decreased by roughly 40. That was different, Dad explained. How was that different? You had insurance. You had options. This is about family celebration. I had insurance with a $25,000 deductible, which wiped away my whole life savings and put me in debt for 3 years. And you advised me to sort things out for myself since I'm an adult. Who should manage my own problems? Ethan, this isn't the time or place, Mom said. When is the time? When is it ever the right time to talk about how you've treated me versus how you treat Sophie? You couldn't spare 25. Zero when I was literally dying in a hospital bed. But you've got 50,000 ready to go for a party. A wedding isn't just a party, Sophie said defensively. I turned to face her straight. You're right, it's not. But neither was life-saving surgery, and nobody organized a savings fund for that. Nobody made a cake. Nobody asked how they could help me survive. You never asked for help, her response was. I literally called you from my hospital bed and asked for help. You urged me to look into financial aid programs before hanging up. Ryan seemed to want to be somewhere else. He's a smart person, Dad's face was turning crimson. We're not going to relitigate past decisions. The question is whether you're going to support your sister during this important time in her life, or whether you're going to be selfish. My answer is no. Sophie's face wrinkled. You're seriously going to ruin my wedding because you're still bitter about some medical bills from years ago. I'm not ruining anything. You've got 50,000 from Mom and Dad. Have whatever wedding you want with that, but I'm not contributing a dime. This is so typical of you, Sophie sobbed, always making everything about yourself. This is supposed to be my moment, and you're turning it into some drama about ancient history. I paid my last payment 8 months ago. Your parents could have helped with the debt from a medical emergency, but they decided not to. Mom tried a guilt trip. We raised you better than this. Family helps family. You're right. Family does help family. But apparently that only applies when it's Sophie who needs help. I got up and grabbed my jacket. Where are you going? Father questioned. Home. Congratulations on the engagement, Sophie. I hope you have a great wedding. But pay for it yourselves. I departed before anybody could reply. I drove home with my hands trembling on the driving wheel and adrenaline coursing through my body. I got home and immediately texted Tim. You won't believe what just happened. His reaction came quickly. Come over. Bring details. The repercussions began the next morning. Mom called at 6:30 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. She phoned again and again. By lunchtime, I had 17 missed calls and texts ranging from, we need to talk to, you're being incredibly selfish, and how can you do this to your sister? Dad's communications became shorter and harsher. Sophie sent me a long emotional text about how I was abandoning her. At the most critical moment in her life, I did not react to any of them. My Aunt Jessica phoned on Friday. Mom's oldest sister is typically rather sensible. Your mother called me very upset, she said. I bet she did. I told her the whole tale. $25,000 in medical debt, years of partiality, the $50,000 for Sophie's wedding, the request for an additional $30,000. The stillness was long. I had no idea about the surgery situation. Jessica eventually said, "Your mother never mentioned it. They didn't tell anyone. This is beyond favoritism. This is cruel." Hearing someone in my family finally realize what I'd been through was validating. I'm not giving them money for a wedding. I told them, "You're not the bad guy. Don't let them guilt you." The pressure campaign lasted for weeks. They attempted every manipulative method. Then they escalated. 3 weeks later, Sophie's pal sent me a message. She had mentioned her selfish brother in a wedding planning group. I screenshotted the thread and gave it to Sophie. "Really? You're putting our family business on social media?" She responded, "Maybe. If you're getting called out by everyone, you'll realize how wrong you are." That's when I made the decision to take charge. I contacted my parents and told them we needed to meet once only, a neutral place. A coffee cafe near their home. Showed up on Saturday morning with a folder full of paperwork. Sat across from them. "I'm going to say this once," I began. "I'm not giving Sophie money for her wedding. Not 30,000. Not 500. Nothing. No, Ethan," Mom began. I held out my hand. "You raised me to be independent and handle my own problems. Those are your exact words, so that's what I'm doing." "This is different," Dad explained. "No, it's not. You taught me that family doesn't bail each other out. I learned that lesson well." I took out my hospital bills, $25,000 in medical debt. I paid it off over 3 years while you funded Sophie's failed ventures. The next paper is a list of everything they've given Sophie. Sophie has earned around 95. Zero since the age of 18. At the same time, nil to me. Their features became pallid. Here's what's happening. I'm not contributing to the wedding. I'm not coming either. And moving forward, I'm treating you exactly how you treated me, with polite distance and zero support. "You're cutting us off?" Mom inquired. "No, you cut me off 4 years ago. I'm just accepting that reality." "This is ridiculous," Dad stated. "You're throwing away your family over money." "No. You chose money over me when I needed you. I'm just respecting that choice." I rose up and left the folder. "That's documentation of what you've spent on Sophie versus me. Keep it. Show people when they ask why I'm not at the wedding." I walked away feeling lighter than I have in years. The nuclear fallout occurred immediately. My parents informed everyone that I had disowned the family. Extended family members reached out, with the majority initially siding with them. But then, something strange happened. Jessica discussed my side with important family members, including Uncle John. He called. "I'm disgusted. I had no idea they'd left you hanging." Several relatives believe my parents assisted with medical expenses. When they discovered the truth, the narrative transformed. My cousin Emily, a nurse, was terrified. They didn't help after emergency surgery. That's not just unsupportive. That's horrifying. The cohesive front crumbled. Meanwhile, my life has greatly improved. They have blocked their numbers. Set your social media to private. I should have set limits years ago. Work was progressing smoothly. Another promotion and a raise. Started dating someone. I took a trip with Tim. The most restful week in years. 6 weeks later, I received an email from Dad. "We need to talk." I didn't open it. I sent it to spam. The wedding occurred last month. Jessica informed me it was fine, although smaller than Sophie preferred. Budget concerns, the $50,000 did not reach very far.